Hey everybody, how you doing today? Hey, I see Evan and David and Steven's here. Hey Steven, good to see you. I'm still getting everything going here. Happy Sunday. I hope everybody's doing good. Let's see if I'm in tune. Yeah, in tune. So let's see here. We've got a few more popping in. Chris is here. And let's see, we've got Kevin. Good to see you, Kevin. Angel's here. Good to see you. So thanks everybody for hanging out yesterday during Guitar Talk. And I want special thanks to everybody who was on the panel. We had Ellie and Evan and Josh and David and Ellie, Josh, David, and Chris. And so thanks everybody for hanging out. Oh, we got Chris is here too. Everybody saying hi. So yeah, it's warm today. It's a beautiful day outside. I'm going to try and go outside a little bit later before dinner. This is a great time for me for doing this. I know everybody's in different time zones and places, and but I can kind of start to wind down. I've done a lot. I had to work today. Did a lot of work today, and so it's kind of cool to wind down with everybody. So Dean's here too. Great to see everybody. So we yesterday we talked about your history with the guitar. And history with the guitar is the right term because there's a lot that goes on. It's up and downs and some really cool stories. The one that's everybody had great stories, but Evans went in the contest for that guitar. I several times last night. I was doing some other things and that popped into my head there. So thank you for sharing that, Evan. Made my day. So the topic for the coming week is welcome back to the guitar. And now I have done something similar to this before. So I'm going to try and take it in a different direction. And so I'm going to ask a few questions from you guys about, for those of you who have taken a break and come back to it, what was some of the struggles you had? So maybe just the things that I normally the issues I normally deal with the people I've helped. Maybe we'll have some new ones too. I'm going to get that all figured out in the morning. Tonight is founder videos evening. And so I'll start that a little bit later. So anybody has their videos, go ahead and pop those up on the forum there. And so let me check here. David says, another great day in the sunshine in the FLA, right? And Steven says, we're not in a state of sunshine over this side of the pond. But yeah, so it's in the southern United States. It is a beautiful day. Just beautiful. And so Evan says, I posted on the group. My neighbor found out I played and asked if I could look at his old copy of a Jackson V. Gonna be funny. I saw the picture. I didn't get a chance to read the post too much, but I did scroll past the picture. And yeah, anytime you come across an old guitar that's worth putting the time into, it's always fun. Dino's here. Hey Dino, how you doing? Good to see you. And Evan says, welcome back, quarantine edition. Okay, so Evan's already starting to get into it. So I'm gonna get the old yellow pad together here. And so for Evan, he says, for me, the struggle was not starting to close to the beginning that I lost interest. Okay, Evan. Not starting too close to the beginning that I lost interest. I already remembered a lot. Angel asked me if I ever got to check out the E-band. No, I haven't. I have been. It's been a challenge getting my experiment going on. So I have a full slate. So my eyes are bigger than when you want to do a whole lot and you don't have a whole lot to do. So thank you for reminding me. I'm going to check out E-band. Maybe we'll check that out today on the stream today. That would be fun to do. Dino says good here in the Northeast, and that's good for you because I know you've had some not fun weather for a long time. You guys could use a break. I know, the green pollen that gets on your car that usually signals the beginning of spring for me, and that happened here a while ago. And so I've been keeping up. I have family up north, and they're just starting to get into that. So I'm gonna check something here real quick. Move the gain down just a little bit. That's better. So David says, I would think you would need to remember why you quit in the first place so you can come at it with a different mindset. That's a good one too. So remember why you quit in the first place. Because it's a psychological thing. It's all up here. This is never going to work. I'm not going to be able to get this done. So I would think to fix it, you'd have to go the same route, fix those problems, fix those ideas that come into your head. So remember why you quit in the first place. I need to take handwriting lessons. I can't even read my own handwriting. Yeah. So that's the if that's what took you out, that's what needs to be fixed to get you back on track, right? Don't you think? Or it could be, the things that you were working on, you were just not right too. So maybe that's another approach to change how you did things. Okay, let's go back to the chat here. Okay. I think you need to remember why you quit in the first place so you can come at it with a different mindset. Yeah, that's good, David. Thank you. Steven says, my biggest regret is not getting into playing lead earlier. I think that's huge. I think that a lot of people limit themselves on the guitar. Even if you don't want to be a lead guitar player, just understanding scales. Your chords come from scales. You're not going to be able to really master chords until you understand the scales. So I think and let me continue. He says, you've been fronting bands and playing for 25 years, but only got into lead 2.5 years ago. Yeah, it opens things up. It makes the rhythm. It makes your rhythm playing better. I know it. I remember that. I remember once I started learning lead, I could start to see these chords, where they came from, and then when I could do something about them. So that's a good, let me write that down here. So that was Steven. Steven says, not playing lead earlier. You have a friend who's in your situation too. He's out in Vegas. I want to get him in on this stuff. He's actually told me the other day that he's taken my free blues course, my free blues lead guitar course. And so I'm going to start to see if he wants to hang out in our chats too. So thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. So Evan says there's a big shift in mindset, also a big opening up of time that led me back to time's huge. Time's what it's all about, right? It's all about, even the music is all about time. Taking your time, taking people through, let me fix this here. Taking people through time is really what you're doing. When you play a song, you start at one point in time, and hopefully you keep someone's attention to the end. I think, they say that 3.5 minutes or 3 minutes and 15 seconds or whatever the song, and this was a while ago, so maybe the average attention span for a song is now 2 minutes. Who knows, but I think we were talking about David Gilmour, and Pink Floyd, I think, are the masters of keeping people's attention. Think about how long those songs are. Think about how long those albums are. And I remember I would just listen. I'd just sit there and just listen to those albums. And the next thing I knew, it was like a half hour had gone by. I think there's an art in that. There's an art in learning how to keep people's attention with the things you play musically from one time to another. So that's important. That goes into phrasing. It goes into rhythm. It goes into arranging. It really it's an art form. That has nothing to do with what I'm writing down, but it's good stuff, man. Keeping people's attention over time. Great idea. Over time. Maybe I'll learn how to write shorthand or something like that, because, man, how am I going to read this back? I'll just watch the video back. How about that? So let's see here. I missed a whole bunch. Big shift in mindset, also opening up of time that led me back. And Evan says, I got old enough to realize I needed help to accomplish this particular goal. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting help. We are all getting help. We talked about this yesterday. Even people who don't want lessons and don't want to have, formal help, that even learning something off of a video, like a concert video, or watching someone play and figuring things out, that's still getting help. You're still learning from somebody. There's nothing wrong with learning. Being smart and learning is where it's at, 100%. Okay, so let me go back here. Speech of my. Okay, so then Steven says, it's been a real eye-opener. The more you can play, the more you can enjoy it. Exactly. And David says, always got to know what your goal is and what's fun about the guitar for you. Fun is another thing too. Where's the fun in this? Where is the fun? And patience. Patience is a big deal too. The payoff for being patient. And that's not for everybody. And that could be a big patience and the payoff. That's tough. That's tough for some people. It's people who can't sit still. I at my when I was in Forsyth, when I was doing my group guitar lessons, I always did a class for free for challenged people who have challenged a lot of autism and those kind of things. And it was so much fun once when I had always helped in that way out a little bit here and there, always. But in a classroom setting like that, I was at the disadvantage at first for a few months. It took me to find the rhythm for that, and it turned out being probably the best thing I did for this 4 years I was there. It was very rewarding, and at some point I was teaching patience. Not an easy thing to do. So, but some of that, and once the academy goes up, I know a few of those guys that were waiting on me to get the academy up. So we may get to see a few of those very cool guys there. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. I'm gonna speed up because I'm really here. This way I'll look like I'm not reading the chat all the time. Okay, I'll speed this up. So David says, okay, that was fun. And then Kevin says, for most of the songs I knew and also had to relearn scales. Regret not continuing to learn when I was younger. Felt like I got to a certain spot where I could play mediocre and then quit learning. Yeah, the good enough. I'm good at this is good enough. You know, that's very common. Very, very common. Getting to a certain point where you say, well, this is my goal. My goal is just to be able to play a little bit, and here it is. And then the frustration comes in after that. So let's see here. I'm going to do, there we go. Much better. Yeah, so forgot most of the songs I knew and also had to relearn scales. Regret not continuing to learn when I was younger and felt like I got to a certain spot where I could play mediocre and then quit learning. And Evan says, that was me, Kevin. There were external factors, but I really just let it slide. Yeah, and sometimes, though, you know, life, you got to think what's more important. I was to a point where I was playing a lot in bars a lot. And I was playing you know, just keeping people happy, keeping people going till they got kicked out, you know, and that's what it didn't seem like I was playing, I was doing anything interesting at some point. I was just playing songs to keep people having fun. And that's cool for a while, but after a while I got kind of tired of that. And that's when I started just going into playing original music and traveling, and that's different. Playing original music and traveling is a whole different animal. You generally play one set, or maybe two very short sets. So most of your time is sitting around waiting or traveling to the next place. Then you get up and then you play your part, and then you're gone. Where when you're playing clubs, I mean, you could be playing from 8 to 1, you know? You could be playing 4 or 5 sets a night. Or if you're in a city where bars stay open all night, you can be playing all night, you know? Let's see here. Kevin says, also, like Steven, never got into league because I didn't believe I could. Yeah. Odino says it's got to be about 3 minutes and 5 seconds. How long people's attention spans lie. Evan says, I tried Leeds work with the blues scale, but they were terrible. I think I'm much better than that now. You're getting, I can tell you, you're getting better from week to week. I can see it. And Steven says, I'm actually teaching myself now as I've learned so much in the last 2.5 years. Having a good tutor is a huge help. It sure is. And then Evan says, yes, some of my favorite songs are 10 to 20 minutes long. That's an art to be able to do that and keep people's attention. Lost my place here. Here we go. Dina says, Rush told the industry we will do what we want. Yeah, they were definitely not the norm. They came at everything from a different angle. Yeah, the Rush story was very cool. I should watch that again. I watched it when it first came out. So, hey, John's here. Hi, John. Good to see you. John says, just downloaded Reaper, and I'm thinking about writing and recording some songs. what's the best way to get some drum tracks and other things to fill in around the guitar parts? There's several ways to go with that. So you have loops and you have MIDI loops. Big difference. Doesn't sound like a big difference, but a big difference. So Reaper and I use Cakewalk is what I use, which is free, but it's just like Reaper. They're all about the same at this point. Didn't used to be. For years, there's a lot of different things. But we all started off using audio loops. It's a recording of some drums, and they were able to sync them to beats so you could stretch them. And if you stretch them too far, they'd sound like crap. And if you compress them too far, they'd sound like just like crap, you know. So you had to kind of keep them around the same beats per minute. They were audio loops, and you copy and paste, and come up with a drum track. And I tried that for years. I did that for years. Helped people with that for years. But then they came up with something called MIDI loops, and this is probably where you want to go. And basically, you get a sound engine of drums, kind of like a keyboard, like a synthesizer, but it has just drum sounds in it. And it's software on your computer. It's actually a plugin for Reaper, a VST plugin. And what happens is you can bring in MIDI loops. Now MIDI started off as just a keyboard, a way to control keyboards. So you have different MIDI channels, 16 MIDI channels, and you can control something within the range of from 0 to 127. And you can control many different things within in increments of that much. And what ends up happening is these people will start to take real drummers playing a beat on a MIDI kit. And what the MIDI kit does is it records the actual hit and how hard it was hit and how long it lasted. It doesn't record the sound. It just records when something happened, kind of like a player piano, as the spool goes through and you see the little cutouts there, and it makes the keys move, you know? So you can have one drum sound, and you can bring in as many different MIDI loops as you want, and you can make them go as fast as you want or as slow as you want, and you can record them. They don't take up a whole lot of space. And so the one that I've landed on is Easy Drummer. And Easy Drummer is easy. It's not easy, but it's compared to all the other programs. I start off with Steven Slate. Actually, I start off with, I don't know. The one before Easy Drummer was Steven Slate Drums 4, which sound fantastic, but they're a little finicky. And then I went into Easy Drummer. And then that only has a few sounds. You can buy other sounds for it. The Steven Slate drums, I had tons of different sounds in it. And you put that in as a plugin as a Reaper keyboard plugin, and then you load in different loops, and it will play them and sync them to the track. Another thing that I use a lot, that I use in a way that most people don't, is I use Band in a Box. And Band in a Box is this. It started off something that jazz players used, and you can type in your chord progression, and it will make a whole background track over that chord progression. So a lot of jazz players use that to practice playing over changes, and it got better and better and better. And now they use real tracks in it, so it's not like it doesn't sound like a keyboard, MIDI background track. And so a lot of times what I'll do if I'm pressed for time, I don't have time to make up a whole drum track and get my bass going and all those kind of things. I'll just go to Band in a Box, find the style of music that I want, put the chord progression in, and then I'll mute the guitars and all the other things and just keep the bass and the drums and come up with, and then I put all the guitars in over top of that. So that's another way that you can go. Steven says, David Gilmour's God and John Mayer is his apprentice, both amazing guitar players. Yeah, they sure are. Both of them are real good. Evan was working out Time by Pink Floyd, and that's fun. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. Lost my place, came back. Saw Floyd in Paris in 94. Yeah, I saw Floyd in Philadelphia. Um, when I forget what Dino and I were talking about that the other day. I saw them at the place where they did Live Aid there. Also saw the Grateful Dead that right around that same time too, at the same place, Veterans Stadium. It's a tour. Saw the same tour New Orleans. The Reese Pulse. Evan, hey Evan, good to see Evan R's here. I find it more of good enough for now. I can come back to a song in 6 months and play it better because of skills being better. Yeah, revisiting songs is always a good idea, and it's a good way to gauge how far you've come along too. Kevin says the guy I took lessons from taught me everything he knew and told me there wasn't more to teach in the lessons, even though I didn't really understand a lot of the theory like Moses, etc. I was 13. There's all sorts of different teachers, and there's always something new to learn. Um, Dean says never had lessons. Now I'm looking for a teacher and mentor. I would suggest hold it off for a week or two, and we're going to get that going. It's going to be great. It's something I've been planning for a long time. But a little history is 2018 in February. That's when I had been teaching for 4 years in my studio. I was burned out, straight up burned out. I was teaching group guitar classes, a lot of them, and burned out, and I couldn't keep it up. I couldn't keep that pace up. And I said, now is the time to do this. I gotta set the standard. I was working another job plus running that. So at that point, I also started doing the podcast. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I thought it would be different than the YouTube thing. Whether that's a good idea or not, if I should have started with YouTube or podcasts, I'm actually pretty happy about this because the people that I've gotten to know through the podcast have been. I don't have the problems that a lot of people who teach on YouTube have with some with the people there. So it's the podcast. The people listening to podcasts have been great. So I'm happy about that. So for the rest of that year, I was still teaching. So I'm doing a full-time job teaching and doing the podcast, right? And finally, for the rest until the summertime, and then to the end of that quarter, and then I decided I'm just going into it. Little did I know, it's not. This isn't the easiest thing to do, and it takes a few years to get it going. And so I've learned by mistakes. I've done some things well, and I've done some things that I could have done better. And I'm learning and learning and learning, just like in guitar. I'm learning from my mistakes, and I am finally into the point where I had a lot of advice from people who I went to people who teach online and had a lot of advice, and they said that you should just get out there and meet the people and put podcasts out and all of those things, and then then build your lesson studio and the academy and all of those things after it's going on. The thing that I didn't realize is that if you're working a job and you're doing content full time, that's about as much time as you have. It's hard to get your courses and all of those other things done when so if I was this one thing I would have done different is I might have got the academy finished first and then started everything. So but either way I'd be still be at the same point. The point being all the way around is that things are going really good. I have the next week off. I've got all the equipment in that I needed that I wasn't able to film during the week last week. So I just had to kind of take that week I was supposed to have off, wait for the equipment come in. Now it's this one. So I'm going to be finishing it up soon, as fast as I possibly can. I may even take another week off if I don't get it done in time. So I will have something there for you, and it's having given lessons for a long time, personal lessons, and then having done group guitar lessons and now doing coaching online, I've learned a lot of different things. I have ideas about how to make this even, I think, even better than one-on-one lessons. In a lot of ways, there's some things that are there's some things that you lose a little bit, but there are definitely some pluses to that. Evan says, John, there's a lot of free drum plugins for your DAW. You want to try? That's what we were talking about. Academy was great for that. Get on the way. I've got Dean I have a list of some people. So can't wait. Awesome. Kevin's not a huge fan of John Mayer's mainstream music, but he's a killer blues guitarist. People haven't heard him play blues, don't believe me, but he's amazing. He sure is. It's awesome. And then Evan says you can also record the MIDI information and try different drum sounds, work the same pattern. That's right. That you can get your structure down of the song, and then go back and change the sounds of the drums to that same beat. It's fun. The songs that I've played on the podcast, I've only played, three or four different songs. All of them were all done with Easy Drummer or Steven Slate drums. Okay, let's see a little bit more. You can also MIDI E drums are what I use with the SD3. Okay, cool. And Steven says, you're bang on, Kevin. His work in John Mayer Trio is amazing. Yeah, who's that bass player he plays? It's like Paladin, somebody Paladin. He's an Italian bass player. It's phenomenal three-piece. Start with the album Try. Yeah. And then John says, good information, thanks. I'm familiar with Easy Drummer, but didn't know about Band in a Box. Band in a Box is cool, man. Now, it didn't used to be. When it first started off, Band in a Box was, it sounded like video game music. You know what I mean? It just didn't sound normal. So I think what they did is I know Brent Mason plays on a lot of these tracks. They went and got a bunch of studio guys and just, I guess, recorded in a certain style, every different way that you could play over an A7 chord, right? And then they had them do that. Then every different way that you could play over a B flat 7 chord. And then it's an enormous amount of files, but what it ends up being, you can just type in what your chord progression is and bam. And then you can also tell it to play it a different way. And so you have variation in the songs and it feels natural. It's really cool. It's not something that you would want to use for a final thing, but I just, what you can do, which is really nice, is like you can just say, okay, I like the bass, the bass track for this. Grab it and pull it right into your DAW, and it takes it right over into your DAW, so you can use it just like it was a bass player, and it syncs. You can tell it what beats per minute you're in. Syncs in. It's really, really cool. It's not cheap though, I'll tell you that. So I think, I may do a video but showing people how I use Band in a Box, which is different than what most people do. And I don't even have the new version of it. I have an older version, and I have no reason to update it because I keep getting. So actually, in this 204 level, I'm finishing up 203, and then I've gone back and I've redone all the background tracks in my 204 level. For like Marty's in a 204 level, a couple people are in 204, and just went through and the 204 level deals with major pentatonic, and it's one thing to show you the patterns for major pentatonic. That's one thing, but actually using it, playing it over soul music, or playing it over folk music, or playing it over rock music, or playing it over blues, it's all different. There's different uses for that. And then to bring other notes in that accentuate what you're doing, there's a lot to the major pentatonic scale. And I remember when I was first starting to play, I didn't care about the major pentatonic scale. I wanted to rock, man. Wanted to play rock music. I was learning doing the minor scale, all the different minors, harmonic minor, melodic minor, minor pentatonic, those things, and that's what I played most of the time. And then when I started getting into bands and playing some different styles of music, and then when I started getting into Hendrix, um, and saw how cool the major pentatonic can sound, it was like that's and I just went crazy on it, and it's so cool. It deserves a whole level there. So yeah, I would do, before you spend the money on Band in a Box, I would look at some newer videos of Band in a Box and see what it does. It's a great practice tool. It's great for background tracks, quick background tracks. So Steven says, what's your number one tip technique to improve your lead playing? Well, the number one thing that I see people who struggle is they think of lead playing as one pattern or two patterns. You get this, the one, it's same in the key of A, this one here, and then this one here. And they learn those two, and they get a lot of mileage out of them, right? I can play an A here and A here. But the problem is your licks start to sound the same. Staying in one pattern, you start to get the sameness of licks, and you start to hear that from them. God, everything just sounds the same. I can't, and once you start thinking of the guitar neck as a whole and learning all your patterns as a whole and practicing going back and forth between them, that's where I see the biggest jump in progress. But it really depends on the person. It depends on what their struggle is. Some people, their struggle is going just everything I do sounds like I'm just going up and down a scale. So that's phrasing. Getting into phrasing is another one of those things where you see, bam, and a lot of our founding members were talking about phrasing a lot. And phrasing, you spend all this work learning these scale patterns, okay? And you go through the scale patterns, and then, okay, I've got my scale patterns, and you practice them over background tracks. Okay, that's there they are, right? And then you listen back, and you're like, well, that's not what I don't want. I want to sound. I want more from that. I want them to sound musical, And then you jump into, so after doing all that work, and then you jump into phrasing, and then phrasing is dealing with listeners' ears for people who don't know your scale patterns, who don't know music, and how do you make something that gets across to those people who know nothing about music using all of these patterns on a grid, right? How do you make that connection? So the first thing I always do with phrasing is, okay, one note, pick the note. I suggest the tonic note, and play your background track and make that as interesting as possible. And you get this. What am I going to do with that? And then you start to think, well, how do I make one note sound good? Rhythm, right? How you space the notes out. And all of those things are the intangibles that someone who's just playing scales up and down, they don't worry about. And then you go to two notes. You say, hey, how about two notes? How can I make two notes sound good? Well, that's a little bit easier than one note, right? And if you're smart, you pick your tonic note and then another note and going back and forth between the two. Then you start doing things, well, okay, I've done all the rhythms. How do I make this a little bit better? You bending notes, The guitar strings are there for bending, So it depends on the student, but those are two of the big hurdles right there, which was the phrasing, and then thinking of really not just being settled on your favorite pattern, the one that you feel comfortable in, which is usually pattern one for most people. It is definitely the most comfortable, but getting used to moving around on the guitar. And then once you can move around the guitar, you start to see your arpeggio shapes in the guitar. And that's where all that cage stuff comes in. That should come later, in my opinion. I'm not a caged kind of guy. Everybody here, I'm sure, knows that. Okay. Steven says Pino Palladino, great bass player, man. I remember I saw that live thing. I thought, it's awesome. And Steve Jordan, of course, Steve Jordan's awesome. B&B is good. Digitech Trio is awesome with the B&B bass. Kenny's here. Hey, Kenny, how you doing? Yeah, I've never played the Trio. A couple of us have that. It sounds like fun. And Evan says, I've got to get more familiar with Cakewalk. I'll get some use when I film the setup on that. Yeah, I really need to do a video about how I use Cakewalk. I've been using Cakewalk for so long. It was called Sonar when Cakewalk actually owned it. And then Gibson bought it and they just trashed it. And then they dumped it. And then so there's another company that has gone back in. I think it's called BandLab. Has gone back in. They bought it and they're giving it away for free. And so, but you know, it's not. It's none of these are user friendly. You know, you got to know a few things. All right. So, Steven says Ionian is cool. Spent 6 months having lessons focused on Mixolydian. Great for expanding your blues. Mixolydian is awesome. I use it every day in lots of different situations. Steven says, I found learning scales progression rather than shapes makes the process of using them to improvise across the entire neck much easier and quicker to master. Yeah, knowing your neck, knowing your scale patterns, knowing your notes, actually knowing what the notes are and you're playing in your scales, understanding the reasons why those things work is not, it's not sexy. It's not the thing that everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to hop on YouTube and just and copy somebody else. But once you understand how this stuff works, you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game. So I agree with you. Evan says I started learning the smaller patterns so I could navigate the scales wherever I was. Yeah, and a lot of times, learning just one octave of the pattern and trying to find that in different places is a good way to open up the neck of the guitar too. He says, now I'm starting to see the intervals in the scales as I play. Just a little bit as a start. Awesome. And Evan already had a BandLab account, so I just downloaded it. Yeah, it's fun. And they've actually made it more stable. I had one issue with it, which was my fault. It wasn't their fault. I had a setting that was changed, and then next thing I knew, I had to record a podcast. Luckily, I had another laptop. I recorded it on another one. And so Steven says, Evan, I learned pentatonics by the shapes and still think of it that way. Everything after that by intervals, and it's a much better method. Yeah, there's and at some point you'll see it both ways. So just keep at it. At some point you stop thinking. You stop thinking so much. At some point, you can look at it as interval jumps. Look at it as the scale shapes. Look at it as surrounding your arpeggio notes, playing chord, like the chord tone way. You know, thinking of your scales as just passing notes in between chord tones. How about that? And then superimposing chords that aren't even there using that method. It gets infinitely more out there, but that's a Larry Carlton way of thinking about it. Larry Carlton doesn't play the scale method. Larry Carlton knows arpeggios all over the neck, and then he knows how to move in between arpeggios and knows what notes to play to give it an inside sound or an outside sound. So he's not thinking the scales so much. He's thinking triads, and he's thinking seventh chords, and he's thinking extensions on top of seventh chords. And then you start to think substitute chords on top of the chords you're playing. So playing on the flat 5 over top of the chords you're playing. And it gets infinitely harder and harder, but more fun. And when you're at to the point where you can really, really enjoy that, and you don't have to think so hard, it becomes tons of fun. So the super arpeggio was one of the things that he did too. You can look up the super arpeggio. If you like getting into alternate ways of playing lead guitar and alternate ways of thinking about it, and a lot of old jazz players, they do the, they play to the arpeggios of the chord and then link those notes, and that's how they've always done it. And they're getting it's different ways of climbing the mountain, getting to the same place, and that place is where you don't have to think anymore. You're just making music. So, okay. Evan says, I recorded one little track I could loop and play over. Recording's going to be a lot of fun once I have something to record. Yeah, don't wait for it though. Just start recording. And keep all of it so you can listen back to it. It's important. Steven says, trying to work on chord tones now. Good. Good job. I think that's great. Great place to be when you're there. And Dino says, I can't wait to see the guitar like that. Maybe one day. There's a time element too. There's a time element. There's just one, at some point, I stopped stressing over it and I started seeing things a little bit. It was around the time where I was listening to a lot of Howard Alden and Bucky Pizzarelli. And they play jazz. You guys might not be into jazz. That's fine, but you could probably appreciate. Let me see if I can find this. You would appreciate how this is going, what's going on here. Okay, even if you're not a jazz player. Let me find a good one, and I'll put it in the chat here. Bucky Pizzarelli and Howard Alden. Let's do a fast one. That's not it. And they're both playing 7-string guitars. Gosh, can I find a good one? There's this whole group of jazz guitar players who play 7-string guitars, and they just play kind of like solo, and so they're doing bass and everything like that. It is so cool, and love for you guys to hear some of it. I just don't want to play a slow one, don't want to play a real ballad. But let me see here. Yeah, this is a decent one. Okay. So here this is just me sharing something that you may not have seen before. So there's the link right there. If you guys, anybody wants to take a look at that. Okay, so thank you, Chris, for taking care of that. I didn't catch what it was, but I appreciate it. Steven says, hard to avoid caged when learning the chord tones. Yeah, I find it I find that if you learn the scale positions first and then start working on arpeggios after that, you meld the two together more. I find that when you start with caged, and then I've seen a lot of players who started with caged get locked into that cage thinking, and it stops their progress. So the meaning is that each one of these positions isn't just for your, okay, that's not the only arpeggio in that position. And unfortunately, caged, that association when you say, well, this is my A shape. Yeah, well, it's also your D Dorian shape. It's also your G Mixolydian shape. There's 7 different arpeggios in there, and the whole point of, to me, using the scale patterns on the guitar, the whole point of it is that they can be used for multiple uses in different ways. And you get the whole point of learning. You only have to learn 5 positions or 7 positions if you're learning the 3 notes, whichever one you're doing. When you learn those, the whole point of it is to get mileage out of them. So you don't have to relearn other patterns, other shapes, don't have to come at it different ways. You just learn how to change the tonic note, use a different note, use the modes, it's just the caged way is a good way to get people up quickly thinking about the guitar neck. But from what I've seen, I don't teach that way. But what I've seen from other players who have learned that way, who have come to me, they're stuck. All of them. They get to a certain point and then they don't realize I can get a lot more use out of this stuff when I don't think of this as the A shape pattern or the C shape or the G shape pattern. Okay. So that's my and Steven's talking about metal guitars use loads of distortion to cover their sloppy technique. In jazz, it's all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. Yeah. Yeah, the what's the guy? Was it Greg Howe? And you listen, he'll play clean. So Alex Skolnick did some. Whenever you hear one of the metal guys who really has their stuff together, Joe Satriani. Dave's talking about Joe Satriani. He's got his act together too. Whenever you hear these guys, you can tell when they play clean if they've got their stuff together. I would think it's more of like the hard rock players get kind of sloppy. The kind of the blues based hard rock players, you hear those guys get kind of sloppy, especially as they're getting older now. They get really sloppy. But if you get players who are technique minded, like a Satriani or something like that, they're fine. Okay. Evan says, trying to embark on a chord knowledge shows me how limiting it is to think of the guitar solo in terms of shapes. Yeah, there's a lot more to it there. Hal. Hey, Hal. Good to see you. Thanks for popping in, man. Hal says, anyone ever hear the joke? Blues is 3 chords played for hundreds of people. Jazz is hundreds of chords played for 3 people. Yeah. Yeah, there's problems with both of it. I like the guys that skate the line between the two. You got like Robin Ford, who's playing blues, but he's playing, and so he's playing a lot more on top of that. And then what's the opposite of that? It's the jazz. You get so technical you forget about the person who's listening there. So too, good joke. It's true. Okay, it's good to see you, Hal. I hope everything's going good for you. Good for you. I hope maybe I get a video from you today. Hey everybody, when you could you take a minute and hit the like for the video? I'd appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe to this. We're building. I started off, a long time ago. I put some videos up. And those were usually just the podcast, and it was just long form content, which is not great for YouTube. At the time, at least, it wasn't great for YouTube. And so now we're focusing on this, putting something up on YouTube every day. And not every video does well, but I'm getting a couple good ones. So we're just going to keep plugging at this, and hopefully everything goes good. But I appreciate any likes that you guys could throw towards this video, this live stream. And let's see here. Get my phone going here too. Hal says video coming. Good. Looking forward to it. I'm going to spend the evening going through that this week. I'm going to, I think I'm going to go out and take a drive today in the middle of the pandemic and enjoy some of this weather. Maybe put the sunroof down. Dino says those two guys are just playing for themselves and don't care. Oh yeah, yeah. You know, it's cool stuff. I love the lines when you hear a guys like that who are playing. You can hear when you've got a 7-string guitar. So one guy's playing the bass and also comping the chords, and the other guy's doing the lines, and you hear all the different lines. You know, voice leading that goes through their playing. So you can almost separate it out, even though it's just two guys playing. It sounds like 5 guys playing. You hear these different lines flowing in between the two. It's really neat stuff. The Howard Alden is the guy who did all the guitar for that Sweet and Low Down music movie. So how Steven says 10 p.m. here. Okay. Yep. I think I know pretty much where you're at. And Kenny says those jokes were like back in 1999 when we used to say there was no places south of Atlanta when anyone was actually listening to the guitar, right? Steven's taking it. Hey, Steven, thank you for hanging out with us today. That was fun. Yeah. Dino says simply amazing for me to comprehend. Yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff. Okay, guys, it's the top of the hour. I'm gonna go ahead and call it for today. And so thanks everybody for being here. I want to thank Chris Ward for being here. I appreciate that, Chris. And Dino, Steven, Kenny, Hal, Evan, David. Let's see here. Had a few others too back in here. John was here. Hey, good to see you, John. Kevin and Dean. Thank you, guys. Keep going by. Josh was here. Good to see you, Josh. Thanks for hanging out with us yesterday, Josh. I appreciate it. Evan R. Good to see you. Hopefully I get to see a video of yours later on. And let me see if I've missed anybody else. I think that I may have gotten everybody who was Angel. Hey, Angel. And I am going to check out the E-band thing. Big check out E-band. And 1 or 2 more. Kevin. Hey, John, thanks for subscribing. I appreciate that. And I think we got everybody. Okay, I'm going to say, I'm going to end the stream, and I'm going to see you tomorrow. We're going to have the live podcast at 4 o'clock tomorrow, and looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.